I am in this weird minority where I say, if you can avoid involving the CEO in the whole employer brand project, do it. Do it. Do not let them know what the heck you're doing.
Welcome to Hired the Podcast. Travis Miller. As always, this is candid conversation with the best and brightest minds in the world of work. And today I'm joined by one who says not, but I disprove that. I was doing my homework, and when I searched for employer branding, your face was the second thing that comes up on YouTube. So there's at least some cultural cachet there here. I'm with James Ellis today. James is the employer branding nerd, one of the top voices of employer branding in the industry. He's a consultant, podcast host, frequent guest. I asked him how many he'd been a part of. He said he can't even remember. It's been so many. Keynote speaker whose proprietary brand building process yields a stronger brand in just a fraction of the time. He also wanted me to let everybody know that he's a Virgo. So we have that. James, welcome to the show, man.
Yeah, send birthday wishes in 2 weeks. It'll be perfect. Hey, Travis, how you doing?
I'm fantastic. We're here on a bright, beautiful Monday. We're bringing the whole team together this week for, as you said, the classic package of training, goal setting, and golf. Taking the whole team out to Top Golf to bang some balls. So it's going to be a great time.
Last time I did that, the package included axe throwing. So you think your whirly ball story was rough. I'm just saying. There is always the opportunity for pain somewhere.
Oh, the whirly ball. Yeah. After that, Alex Shahovsky, I love you, sir. Still a memory. I'd be terrified to go axe throwing after one of our employees got a detached cornea during our whirly ball escapade. Good Lord. So how do axe throwing, detached corneas, and all of these things play into employer branding, James?
They don't. Thanks everybody for coming. It's been a pleasure. I got to go.
So I kind of want to, this is a show about the world of work. I mean, we got a lot of hiring leaders and candidates searching for companies. So most of them probably have a vague idea of what employer branding is, but at its biggest definition,
you'd be surprised.
I think they probably would too. But just to start us off, so everybody's kind of on an equal foundation. How do you define it? How do you define what employer branding is?
I get asked this question, and the truth is I can't answer the question directly. I have to break it up into a few little pieces because it's only relative to the other pieces you go, oh, I get it. This makes sense. Like it just bear with me. I apologize. I am the nerd. This is how my nerd gets proven, how it metastasizes, and you get to manifest it with me. Employer brand is the thing that makes your company different as an employer. What makes you different? What's the thing you offer? What's the mission? What's the reward? What's the experience? What's the stuff that makes you not like other companies? Employer branding is the act of taking that difference, that unusual element, that uniqueness, and turning it into narratives and content and embedding it at every stage of the candidate journey so that a candidate goes, oh, you don't just say you like innovation. I'm seeing the care for innovation at every single step of the game. The thing that makes it different from recruitment marketing, which is where everybody kind of gets it a little confused and muddles up, is that branding is an idea. Recruitment marketing is the advertising. Okay. How do I take that idea? How do I stick it on an ad? How do I put it in the right channels and put it in the right place? It is very different. And anybody who's done marketing knows the difference between branding and advertising are very, very different skills, different results, different purposes, different metrics. But I see that a lot of TA leaders tend to merge the two ideas that, recruitment marketing and employer branding are effectively, at best, two sides of the same coin, at worst, the same thing. And they're really not.
Uh-huh. How do you teach teams how to do that? You said anybody that's in advertising knows the difference between brand and advertising.
Yeah.
Human resources, talent acquisition,
operations,
C-level, not as much.
Yeah.
So how do you teach somebody how to do that? And maybe the bigger question, and maybe we should start there, is who do you teach?
Well, in a perfect world, and I don't live in a perfect world, maybe you do, and if you do, I'd love a visa. I'd love a visa.
I don't. I can't get this here to stay in place for the life of me, so definitely not perfect.
In a perfect world, every person in the company understands the employer brand and understands how to tell their version of the employer brand. So the thing, if you remember, an employer brand is what makes you different. There isn't like a series of bullet points to reiterate. I don't think employees are mynah birds and parrots who just reiterate and say the same thing. We're a great place to work. We're a great place to work. I want a cracker, right? I don't think people and humans work that way. What happens is a company understands that they care about a mission or a goal, or they care about how a certain experience happens, or they care about a reward structure, they care about growing people, whatever that thing is. And it's true for the whole company, and every part of the company goes, yes, this is how that idea makes sense in my world. So if you care about innovation, that's easy to talk about how your developers care about innovation or your R&D cares about innovation, but how would your lawyers say that you're innovative? How would your salespeople say that they're innovative? What does innovation look like in recruiting and HR? And if everybody understands the bigger idea of what makes that company different and can tell their version of the story, like it's fan fiction or a cover song, right? Their version of what this idea is. It's not that there's a divergence. It's that there's a lot of different sounds converging on the same idea, right? Everybody goes like, look, Facebook's move fast and break things for being hellacious and destroying democracy as we know it, yada, 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 already been covered. We don't have to relitigate. Thank you so much. But it's not like the lawyers went, no, they're move fast and break things and we are move slow and build things. Everybody at Facebook was move fast and break things. That's how you knew you fit in. And so every piece of it would see it differently, but they all told a story of moving fast and breaking things up until the point where they destroyed lots of bad things. And we don't want to get into that. The thing I tell recruiters especially, because honestly, it's recruiters who are the slowest to say that there's value in this, is this story. Think about your company. And if you're a good recruiter, I bet if I asked you, can you name 100 great things about this company? They could. They could go all about how everything from the lunch is delicious to the work-life balance is fantastic to in the bathrooms, the paper towels aren't like postage stamps, like they are really bad companies. We've all worked there. We understand what I'm talking about. Okay, cool. We don't have to get into that. But there's a million reasons why this is a great company. But if a recruiter goes to a stranger, and that's what a candidate is, and says, would you like to hear 100 reasons why this company is different or nice? There'd be like a candidate-shaped hole in the wall where they ran screaming away. It doesn't work that way. So employer branding is saying, of the 100 things that make this company great, what's the thing that's different? What's the 2 things that are different? Start there. That is your hook. That is the thing that differentiates you from startups and competitors and established companies. That's the thing that's different. And then you surround it with the usual stuff, like we have a great salary and great benefits and all this other stuff. But that's the thing that's different, and that's where it works. And recruiters realize that there are millions of companies sending the exact same outreach messages they're sending the exact same, LinkedIn posts that they're sending, the we're hiring posts, who cares? They realize that it's better to stand out with a message that's specific, that's attractive, that's different, that's real, than it is to just be yet another. And that's when recruiting kind of gets it. And when recruiting gets it, hiring managers get it. And when a hiring manager gets it, the business starts to get it.
Well, you make an interesting point there that the 2 people who probably, or 2 groups that probably have the most stake in creating employer brand and putting forth the employer branding messages are the 2 people who are least effective at sharing it. That's President, CEO, and the recruiting team. Because if a CEO or a talent acquisition goes out to a stranger and says, I'm great, I'm awesome, we're different, we're fantastic, trust me, bullshit. Nobody's going to believe them.
No.
But how do those people, the people who have probably the most personal stakes in it, how are they able to get the people the third party advocacy of the people who have significantly less stakes out there? How do you get them to go out and do the branding side of it?
Yeah. And I think you raise a strong point that CEOs are very often the person driving an employer brand project. I am in this weird minority where I say, if you can avoid involving the CEO in the whole employer brand project, do it. Do it. Do not let them know what the heck you're doing, because CEOs tend to equate employer brand not with what makes the company different, but what makes the company great. and they're the CEO. So whatever makes the company great makes them great, right? So therefore, all they're going to do is pour gasoline on this idea of show how we're great, show how we're great. Of course, in their mind, they're thinking show how I'm great, show how I'm great, but that's a separate thing. What you want to do is focus on that difference. And when you do that, when you can kind of push the CEO and say, we're not here to make you look good. You got a whole PR corp comms team to do that. What we're here to do is get great talent who doesn't already work here. And by the way, you do, to understand how we're different and how to choose us over literally millions of other options. That's where you kind of start that. But to your actual question, how do you get everybody to kind of get involved? Well, it's interesting because I don't think of employer branding as the label or the hashtag. I think of it as looking at the company in the aggregate. How you do anything is how you do everything. Right? There's no, again, Facebook can move fast and break things. The kitchen staff was not moving fast and breaking things. Everybody was doing it. And because everyone was doing it, you believed it was true everywhere. It made sense. It didn't feel like a poster or wallpaper. It felt like DNA. It felt like this is who this company really is. So if you can kind of explain to the rank and file, so to speak, if that's the right term, hey, the reason why people like to work here X, Y, and Z, and the reason of those that make us different is this. Can you tell your own story about that idea from your point of view, from your, wherever your feet stand, from wherever your world is? What's your version of that story? And I ask you to do that because your voice matters. It is an orchestra. It is a choir, and we want everyone to share in that. And because when everybody shares it, it's more real, it's more valuable, it's more powerful. And it's your chance to tell your version of that story. People tend to step up for that. If there's proper guidelines around what you're allowed to say and what you're not allowed to say, right? If you've got good social media policies and everybody's been trained in that, people step up and they're willing to talk about, especially when you give them a good prompt, when you say, look, we think we're different because we offer a level of collaboration that no one else does in the pharmaceutical industry, right? Okay, that's a specific prompt. That's not, why are we great? That's so generic. It's so weak. You're going to get really bad oatmeal back. You're not going to get something interesting. That's not a good story. If I say, look, you have told me how much you care about collaboration and how this company collaborates together across borders, across aisles, across functions, more so and better than any other company you've ever seen. Tell me that story. You can't stop these people from talking about these ideas. Mostly it's about giving them a good prompt that reflects what they see and isn't generic, tell me why we're good, which is really where so much employer blanding ends up coming from.
Mm-hmm. There was one article I read that I'm going to withhold judgment until I hear your opinion on it. But one of them said to create a designation or a part of somebody's job description to be a brand ambassador and to compensate them for it.
Yeah, okay. I guess go for it. But look, who do you believe? The salesperson who's compensated for making the sale, or the person who bought it and is going to tell you what they saw and what they felt and what they liked about it? It's like that. Look, there's a bigger conversation at work here, and that is recruiting its own separate function? Yes, it has separate skills. Yes, it has separate tool sets. Yes, it has separate kind of metrics and drivers, and it got to own a piece of it. But ultimately, don't you want the entire company to help recruit? Don't you want everyone to be talking about what it's like to work there and what they like about it and what's different about it? Don't you want them all to be sending referrals and talking up what the new role is? And don't you want everybody to be part of that? And I think there's so much vestigial thinking from industrial revolution that says, okay, that's your job. I don't talk to you because I don't have to do that job. I'm going to be over here doing this job and never the twain shall meet. The truth is, any job that you can structure and codify has been either automated or farmed offshore and gone. All that's left are messy, complicated jobs. People solving problems, people uncovering challenges that they'd never seen before. Recruiting is one of those challenges. Employer brand is one of those challenges. It's everybody's business to do that, to step up and do that. If you got to pay for it, you're going to end up getting a lot of people who are just saying the thing they got to say to get paid. And it's not only is it not authentic, and I think authentic is its own loaded term on 17 different levels. It's just that it's not going to be as powerful and useful as that moment someone has that epiphany of, wow, I saw collaboration across two teams, and I've never seen a biochemist talk to an IT engineer like that. They sat down and they figured something out. And in doing so, they put us in a spot where we did something we've never done before. Like that kind of like shock and surprise, that emotional state, that doesn't come from getting paid to think of an idea and talking about it. It's not how it works. You want people to be organic in that approach at best. But at the same time, if you got the money to throw around, throw it around. I mean, I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same mindset as you, but I'm also curious and how do you coach, teach, and train people on this portion of the job, and how do you maybe incentivize them is the wrong word, but to an extent,
non-financial.
People are doing their job or aspects of their job. How do you get this to be not part of their job, but part of what they do, who they are? How do you teach them how to do it?
I don't think of it as teaching them how to do it. I think of it as unlocking their desire to do it. Because the truth is, remember, companies are not, anything more than legal documents. Until you stick some people in a company, companies are just tax filings and tax numbers and crap that nobody cares about, right? Only the lawyers care about. It's not until you stick some people in it that becomes interesting. Because suddenly, whether it's a startup, whether it's Bank of America, I don't care, your job is a function of who you're standing next to and who you're sitting next to and who you're working with and who you're engaging with, right? A crappy company with a great boss and a great team is way easier to recruit for and way easier to hire for than a great company where everybody says, yeah, but not that one team. Oh no, don't join them. They're a nightmare, right? And I think if you put it in terms of not, hey, help the company recruit, which is really abstract and really blah, blah, blah. If you think of it in terms of, look, who do you want sitting next to you? What's the kind of person who would be great to work with and engage with and collaborate with? And who is going to be an amazing new hire that's going to help you achieve new heights as you help them achieve new heights? Bring them. Talk about it. Talk about that idea. And the more you talk about it, the more that person is going to go, that sounds like something I want. And they show up, right? There's so much about recruiting that's about post the ad and post the job and you filter through the pile of hay to find the needle and blah, 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 blah. I think, again, that's vestigial thinking from a past era. Right now, great recruiting is not about how do you make a big haystack. Great recruiting is how do I generate two needles, the one I hire and the one I go, it wasn't quite perfect. We're so sorry. And when you think of recruiting as how do you find amazing hires instead of how do you generate applications in bulk, you start to realize that the stories you tell dictate who shows up, right? Look, let me take two steps back. Okay. If you think of recruiting as piling up as many applications as possible, the best way to do that is to say nothing but amazing things about this company. It's tickle fights and puppies and daisies and pizza every Thursday. And it's, you get a back massage every 2 weeks. Like, it's amazing. And everybody who owns a keyboard will go apply, right? They'll just hang on the keys until they apply. And you're going to be filled with applications and none of them are hireable. Because you're not saying anything interesting. You're saying roses and delightfulness and everything's happy and it's all bullshit. If you say, hey, this is a company that's incredibly collaborative and here's what's interesting about it. One, I get to engage with people who are not in my function, who I would normally not ever get to engage with. And they have taught me so much about stuff I never even thought about. And I think I've taught them a lot of stuff. And because of that, we're inventing stuff. Here's the real deal. It's hard collaborating. It's tough teaching my function to someone who's never thought about my function before. And don't worry, it's probably twice as tough for them to teach me their function too. But the outcome is so powerful. That story is not going to attract 1 million people because it's not a universally attractive story. But the 4 people who go, yes, every single one of them is a killer hire. I guarantee you right now. That is what employer branding is supposed to be doing, helping you not be universally attractive and get as many people as possible, but to say, this is our specific story. And when employees understand what that story is, and they understand that they are asked to unlock their version of it, they show up. And the more they show up, the more they get the people who are side by side, who you don't have to explain collaboration to. They're set. They're excited to collaborate with you because you told the story about collaboration. Don't you want to work next to that person? And by the way, the answer is always yes. And that's how you get people excited about this stuff. It's not about incentivizing financially. It's about saying, look, you're going to spend 8 hours with this person, 10 hours with this person, God help you, 12 hours with this person. Don't you want to be someone you want to spend time with? That's the game.
Mm-hmm. So where do you draw the line between employer branding and if people are sharing their personal message about the company, the work, who they're doing it with? Where's the line between employer branding and personal and professional branding?
Hardly any. Okay. Hardly any. And I don't want to draw lines because I feel like most of employer brand success happens when companies start to erase as many lines as possible, to the point where good companies who do amazing employer branding, they're not doing employer branding at all. They're doing branding. And that branding is the same brand that the consumer brand team uses and the investor relation teams use and the marketplace brand teams use and the employer brand team use. It's the same idea. If you try and make a separate brand, it doesn't fit. The employer brand and the consumer brand don't align. It's schizophrenic. It's weird. It's uncomfortable. You don't believe any of it. And actually, the more you invest in your employer brand that doesn't align with your consumer brand, the more you're actually kind of undercutting your consumer brand, which is where your bread gets buttered, right? So you don't want to do that. Personal brand is just an extension of how does the individual talk about that brand in their function, in their world, to their network. Now, if they want to be seen as smart, capable, useful, they're going to want to talk about that brand to their audience. They're going to want to show off themselves a little bit. That serves employer brand. Of course it does. But too many companies are drawing these lines saying, oh, don't promote the person, promote the company. Again, that comes from CEO thinking that the company is the person, the CEO, and it's a messy mess. Don't. Just erase that line. People are going to talk about you no matter what you do, no matter what your policies are. They're going to talk about, I like working here. This is what I get out of it. This is what's fantastic about it. This is what sucks, all of it. The answer is to figure out what's something that's specifically unique about your company that you can leverage as a hook that they'll talk about so that what they say supports what you do. It's the companies that are trying to be universally attractive and that platitude-based kind of a branding where someone says, yeah, it's pretty good except for this one thing. That one thing is like the fly in the dinner, right? It's the fly sitting on the soup. It's like, I'm sure it's a 5-star meal, but the fly kind of undercuts it. If your brand is about something specific and unique, like here's an example. Okay. When I was working at Roku, Roku's brand is all about autonomy. They want to offer people autonomy. They want to hire people and say, you tell us what to do. But that never stopped us from getting these Glassdoor reviews that said, this place is chaotic. There's no rules. It's really, really messy. I don't know what's going on. Who's my boss? The inmates are running the asylum. Yada, yada, yada. This place is a nightmare. Now, in a company that's all about universally platitude-y based kind of branding, that one person's opinion is the turd in the punch bowl. It is going to ruin whatever else, any experience, anybody like, oh God, that sounds horrible. I got to get out of here. But if the brand is about how everyone has autonomy, how everyone is expected to make rules, that you're the expert and we want you to tell us the rules, that complaint seems like proof that autonomy is true, that this is a company that truly invests in autonomy, because you can now not see just the positive side of it, but also the negative side of it in those Glassdoor reviews, right? And it won't change a 2-star into a 5-star review, but it will say, here's further proof that the things we're talking about are true. And because those things we're talking about have a positive and a negative side. Mm-hmm. You know, if we're talking about collaboration, it's hard to collaborate, but the outcomes are positive. That's the bad and the good. And the more you lean into that kind of brand, the more an individual can take that story, tell their version of it, and even if it's not exactly what you would want them to say, it still supports the bigger idea. And that's what a brand is. It's this idea that everybody shares about what it's like to be here, not just because the brander said, this is the brand, now repeat it, but because everybody sees that same idea and talks about it.
So like at Roku, whose value is autonomy, we're going to hire smart people, we're going to let them do their thing. People reading that message and seeing the Glassdoor reviews of this is chaos. Everybody's running their own thing. Mm-hmm. A lot of people are going to see that and say, holy crap, that's not for me. Yeah. But it is the small number of people who are like autonomy, chaos, no rules.
Because if you want autonomy, autonomy doesn't come with support. right? It's like an adventure in which you can't die. It's like, okay, if it's really adventurous, there's always some danger here, even if it's just whirly ball, right? You can't just, keep it safe. There's no all positive, no negative. And any positive, if you don't embrace the negative side of it, it just seems like a platitude. And that's really what it can't be. And the more you're specific on this thing you offer, you're right. 90% of people might go, that's not for me. But the 10% of people who say that's for me, they are the best hires you will ever have. They get what you're about and they are ready to jump on board.
So how does a small organization like us, somebody that's 10, 20, 50, 100 people large, that doesn't have departments, they don't have people dedicated to this.
Yeah.
You say keep the CEO out of it. But a lot of times, 10-person company, 5-person company, the CEO has to be involved in this. What do you teach them when they can't have the volume of message out there at a company like Roku?
There's not a correlation between volume of messaging and strength of brand, right? One of the strongest brands is Boston Dynamics, the people who make those terrifying robot videos. They're going to take over the world and it's all Terminator and we're just waiting to die. It's when they release the one where it's like, oh my God, it opens the doorknob, we're all toast. Like we all had that moment of, oh boy, right? We were really hoping the doorknob would thwart the robot invasion. And here it is. It's proof it doesn't happen. That wasn't a big company. It's not a big company. What they did is they told very specific stories about robots, which in any other industry would assume it's boring. It's just industry kind of stuff. Like the company that makes custom staircases, right? And who cares? Who cares? But this was well-told stories about robots and they made them dance. They got the music and everything. And they were really just there to show off what these robots could do. But at the same time, they're also telling stories about what it's like to work there, right? The company that comes up with, let's make the robots dance is a very specific company. It's not Honda, right? Where Honda makes the Osmo and they make the very specific. Theirs are not funky robots. These were funky robots that told you a lot about the company and what it did. Not a very big company. Only a couple hundred people actually work there, even in its heyday, even when it's starting to become a top employer. So there's not a correlation. So even if you're only 10 people, that's fine. Because chances are you don't need to hire 100,000 people. You need to hire 4, right? It's not about volume. Amazon's the company that needs to hire 125,000 people this year, not you. So you don't need 100 million people to know your brand and understand why it's attractive. What you need is specificity, because that specificity will allow that message to find the right person, right? You think of like any viral kind of like a book or, when Game of Thrones was coming out, it's total nerd book, right? It's like Lord of the Rings, but not really. It's a little more political and you're like, blah, blah, blah. Only nerds read that book for a while. But the nerds told the other nerds about this book. Like, look, it's like this, but it's not. It's doing this whole other thing. And the nerd audience shared that. And I, as a fellow nerd, it's non-pejorative, whatever. But the nerd audience would share it to other nerds. Like they didn't go on, YouTube and say, here's the greatest book. It's going to beat every Colleen Hoover book ever, right? No, they said, this is just for the nerds. And the nerds heard it and they went, that's for me. And over time, the nerds kind of took over and it had its own life. But it's about knowing that your audience will find your message if you tell it clearly, if you tell it specifically, if it's not full of platitudes and pablum and bullshit, if it's specific to you, people will find it. So in a 10-person company, it's actually a little easier to identify what makes you different and actually a lot easier to get every one of those 10 people to say, I understand this brand, I understand this idea, and I understand my role in promoting that brand to my audiences and my networks. Getting everybody at Amazon to do anything is impossible. There's just too many people. And it's turning I used to say the Titanic, but it turns out all those big ships with the cities on top, they're like way bigger than the Titanic. And no one really thinks about that. They're like 4 times the Titanic. Those things do not turn quickly. Those are most companies, right? They need an edict from on high before they even begin to send the message down to the thing to make the thing happen where you turn. It takes forever. It's the 10, 100, 500-person companies who can move way quicker, way more effectively. And because of that, the stories they tell are more interesting. They're more direct, right? It's not, well, my manager said to do this, so I guess I wrote it and I had it approved by legal. And then comms took a look at it and they polished off the rough edges. And I guess that's what was left. When there's 10 people, that's the straight dope. That's okay. That person told a story about something that happened to them, and provided they understand the brand, it's way more compelling and will reach way more people.
You think that will reach more people?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. The messages that, okay, so now I'm thinking about Instagram.
Okay.
Everybody's on Instagram, like my pictures of my kid on Instagram. If anybody cares, you don't, that's fine. You're not supposed to, whatever. That's what Instagram's for. But there are these really interesting businesses that pop up that if I said, this is a business about a guy who makes clothes. Look at me. I'm not a guy who cares about the clothes. Why would I care about a tailor? Why would I care about a guy thinking about how a jacket should fit? So not interesting to me. But he tells very specific historical stories about why that bomber jacket looks like that, why it's got this fold in this part of the sleeve. And he goes really in depth on how it's made. And then he says, okay, here's 3 different companies making 3 different versions of the same product. Let's see how they're different. And he gets so in the weeds. I mean, like so in the weeds that you watch 15 seconds of it and you're just like, tell me more. What is this? It's just a guy. I think the company is 4 people making clothing, but he's able to tell historical, interesting stories about his clothes because he doesn't have to run it through a marketing team and a marketing agency and polish it off. And the legal says it. It's just the dude who owns the company saying, this is why we care about this one weird little thing. Like if you looked at your Instagram feeds or your TikTok feeds, you're going to have all these weird little kind of like people showing off their golf swing. Hey, critique my swing. What can I do better? Where is the audience for that? But because it's an interesting story and there's interaction, it spreads, it shows up. It's the fact that you're smaller, the fact that you're more nichier that allows you to tell a more interesting story. What is Ford going to tell me about cars other than you should buy one and they have 4 wheels? That's really about it. It's the weird company making a car out of a chassis that is a go-kart that's like, okay, what is this? This is interesting. That's where real stories happen. That's where the really exciting, interesting stories happen. That's small company thinking. That's how they succeed.
Yeah. And it's finding your market. You know, I think about one of my nerdism is kind of a golf nerd. I follow a lot of different people. I watch a lot of it. And yeah, I'm sure Nike sells more golf shirts than a ton of these people. But if you look at Instagram, companies like Good Golf and Bad Birdie and them, they've got significantly more following and voice than a company like Nike. And again, I go back to maybe responsibility is the wrong word, but
maybe
who's the person or the people, and maybe it's just different between, I'm talking myself out of this as I'm talking, but who's the person for creating those videos about the badass bomber jacket that they're so proud of?
Yeah. And that's a marketing decision. And that is when you're that small, and as you know, when you're wearing 17 different hats, you're all marketers, you're all recruiters, you're all employer branders, you're all quality control half the time, right? You know, you're all involved in these decisions. And so if someone on high says, look, this is how we tell our story, the story gets told. It's interesting. It's engaging. It's not, look, Nike tells amazing stories, right? Whether it's, Colin Kaepernick or it's a U.S. women's soccer team or whatever, they tell amazing stories around a core idea, a brand that is absolutely killer. You cannot second guess Nike's brand work. They are the kings and queens of what they are. To your point, because they're so big, it's very hard for them to tell a golf story. It's very hard for them to tell a running story. Like Hoka and On Cloud and Zero are all shoes for different runners. In fact, the Zero shoes are all about zero drop, flat foot, so you can really feel the road. Nike's never going to do anything like that. Mm-hmm. What they're going to do is hire a famous runner and talk about this is why you should run, knowing that 60% of that audience is going to buy Nike. And the other 40% is going to get divided amongst 100 different companies who are focused on something different. And that's how Nike wins. That is a strategy choice. Mm-hmm. When the small company says, we're going to tell a story just to our audience, that is a strategic choice. They're not going to beat Nike. They're not trying to beat Nike. What they're trying to do is carve a niche that says, look, the bigger Nike gets, the more they don't care about this tiny, tiny piece that we will own. And once we own it, we can expand that space. That's how we really kind of grow into whatever it's going to become. Mm-hmm. Employer brand's kind of the same way. Like, first off, there is no big employer brand. There's no hegemony in this space. There's no Nike of shoes for what we do. Every company is kind of a challenger brand when it comes to hiring, right? Nobody is hiring 90% of people and there's fight over the 10%. It's even the Googles of the world, even the Amazons of the world are only hiring a tiny fraction of the people. So they have to figure out how to stand out. And they have done that by relying on their corporate halo, their brand. Hey, everybody knows Amazon. Everybody knows Google. It's the smaller companies who say, look, you don't know us, so that gives us a chance to tell our story. And we're not going to use an agency to tell you what you should know. We're going to ask Susan over in QA, Susan, why are you here? And what is something interesting you learned this week? Susan goes, oh, okay, well, it's this. And you're recording it on your pocket supercomputer. It's not a super sexy kind of setup. It's just, hey, this is what's going on. It feels real. It feels authentic. And other QA people will be like, oh, yeah, I know Susan. She's great. I saw her video. That's how you hire the next QA person. Mm-hmm. It's about being specific about what you're offering, who you are, and taking the chances that the big companies can't afford to, because too many risks, hey, it's not attractive to enough people. Mm-hmm. Think of it, right? If you're trying to appeal to everybody, it goes back to the haystack model. You can only say nice things. If you're only talking to a tight market, a niche of audience who understands the good and the bad because they're the nerds that you are, you can talk about the good and bad and they go, you're one of us. You understand the good and the bad of this. We want to be part of you.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's back to Boston Dynamics. It's like Rockwell, so big. I mean, one of the biggest robot manufacturers in the world.
Yeah.
I know their product. I know it well, but I mean, I guess I know because I've talked to a number of people that work there over the years, but most people, I don't think they have a general sense of what it's like to actually work there.
Yeah.
Whereas a company like Boston Dynamics,
all personality.
It's all personality. You know what it's like to work there.
Yeah. And look, I'm not a roboticist in any way, shape, or form. Is the robots that Toyota making better than the stuff Boston Dynamics are making? You're asking the wrong person. All I know is that Boston Dynamics has said, we're showing off our work. We want you to see these incomplete robots. We want you to see what they've achieved lately, even though they're still messy. And I love when they show the bloopers of the thing falling over all the time. That's interesting. That's the personality. That's the willingness to say, let me show you what's going on. Is Toyota saying that? No. Is Rockwell going to say that? No. They're protecting larger markets and they can't let anything bad come out. It's a different model. Their strategy isn't wrong. When you're the leader in a space, you have to win by showing off how big you are. Mm-hmm. It's the tiny companies who say, well, we can't show off how big we are. We have to show how we're different.
So employer branding is something that companies that have the least amount of expendable time, people, and resources to do are the ones that should really be focusing on it.
It is kind of weird that way, but yeah. Because Google, look, honestly, the biggest employer brands you can think of are Google and Amazon. And Amazon has a big employer brand team, but Google, as far as I know, has never had an employer brand or recruitment marketing team. And yet, for 10 years, it was the number one place to work for Universum. And it's not because the employer brand team was so good. It was because they were so clear on what they offered, and they talked about the perks and the things they offered employees. Goldman Sachs, I don't know if Goldman Sachs has an employer brand team, but it doesn't matter. They don't need one because they always have a lot of people who say, I want to work at Goldman Sachs because that's how I'm going to get rich. I don't care how hard I have to work, but that's where it's going to be. If you're crystal clear about what you offer, you don't really need to do employer branding. Unfortunately, most companies don't have that clarity. They don't have that focus. So they have to say, okay, how do we not manufacture, but kind of uncover? How do we unpack the thing that makes us different? And so I like to think of employer brand for most companies. And by most companies, I mean under 2,000 people, as being just understand the direction and get a set of rules. Let the company figure it out from there. Let the company play around, right? If you hired me and I built your employer brand and I gave you a playbook on what you should do with it, I'm not the expert on how you tell your story. It's your story, and you're the expert on the people you're trying to tell it to. So if you're a roboticist, what do I know about robots? I would never say you should make your robots dance. I never would have thought of that. I wouldn't think that was possible. But Boston said, yeah, let's make our robots dance. I bet that would be really interesting. And it shows off how we're different. So employer brand doesn't have to be buy a function, build a function, pay for it every year. It doesn't have to be like that. For most companies, it's about just get a little direction, get some ideas of what what matters and what employer branding is and how you can kind of embed it in everything you do, and then give it to your employees to say, where would you take this? How would you tell the story? Where would you think this is the story? If you were applying, what would you want to know about this company? That's where great employer branding works. So it doesn't have to sit in a team. It just has to be something that everybody kind of gets and understands that posting jobs to job boards is not how your best hires are going to come. It's about telling interesting stories that are uniquely yours.
Would you figure out first what the story is, or who do you want to hear it?
That is kind of a chicken egg situation. So I think of it because I focus on how fast can we get to something useful. I take a minimal viable brand kind of approach, right? I'm not building the Titanic. I'm building, the dinghy at best, because I know that'll get the job done. I focus on, if I can find something that makes you different, I start there. And that starts by doing audits on your competitors. What do they talk about? What are they focused on? What is the, if this is, an MBA class, where is the red ocean and where is the blue ocean? And then I talk to your staff and say, tell me not what you like working about here. I don't care. What's different about this company? What's different about the experience? How does this compare to your last 2 or 3 companies? And invariably, as you talk to a focus group or two, something pops. Something just kind of goes, somebody says something in passing and you're like, whoa, I've never heard that before. What was that? Say that again. Talk about that. Can we go deeper in that? It just kind of pops. And that's the beginning of your brand. Because once you define how you're different, I take that and I kind of rip stuff out and kind of put it into a position where you're like, okay, this is why I can justify it. Here's the rationale behind it. Here's how you kind of talk about it. And then I give it back to staff and say, how do you talk about this? And that's when the really interesting stuff happens. That's when they say, oh yeah, that one time in the office when no one was around, we made our robots dance. Tell me that story. Like that's the real lean in moment. So to me, it's not about understanding who you're looking for, because the truth is most companies are looking for people who are more like themselves. So I worry about that less. There are circumstances in which a company is saying, okay, we're moving into Omaha. How do we talk to Omaha? You're like, yeah, that's a different audience from wherever you're from. Okay, that's different. Now, how do we take that core idea and translate it to someone in Omaha? Let's look at Omaha companies. Let's look at other competitors in that space. Let's look at what they're talking about. Let's see if we can translate what makes us different into that space. That's the work being done there. And then you say, how do we get it in front of Omaha? And that's where recruitment marketing starts to show up, channel selections and ad building and all that stuff. But it is that core of what makes us different, not what makes us good.
Love it. Well, James, I think people at this point probably have a pretty clear idea of what they would reach out to you about if they needed your help. What's the best way for them to find you?
2 ways. LinkedIn, obviously, I live there. It's just James Ellis and employer brand. I'm going to pop right up with a big orange, background. You can't miss me. The other thing I would say, rather than reach out to me, take a look at some of my resources. I've put all my articles and books and classes and everything I've built into one spot. Go to employerbrand.ing, employer branding. Yes, that's right. Cute. ING is it's a new, final top level domain. It's really cool. Lots of resources and most of them are free. So videos and classes and all that stuff. Take a look at that stuff. And if it's interesting, I'm sure you'll find a way to talk to me.
James, this has been fantastic. Thank you, as always, to Noah Cuff, our producer, James Ellis. I'm Travis Miller. Talk to y'all soon.